Hello, everyone, and welcome to the special edition of Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan, and today I'm here with three of the writers and artists from Primal Paper Comics doing a Primal Paper roundtable. And with me, I have Justin Cristelli, a.k.a. the Real Manos.
Hello, everybody.
And I also have Jeff Hewitt.
Yo.
Author of The Ends. And finally, I have Vince White, author of The Legend of Willpower.
Hello, hello.
And of course, as everyone I'm sure is aware, Manos is the author of Red Knight. Manos, you've been kind of heading up Primal Paper now for the last, year or a few months? Or?
I'd still say months. It was about around fall. I really started to take an interest in kind of doing a little bit of steering of the ship.
They've really organized this stuff really well together now. Before, there were a few comics that were kind of loosely coming out. Now we've got some really consistently published things, and might I say, an incredibly good-looking website now.
Oh, thank you. That's Jeff.
Thank you.
Oh, good job, Jeff. I was gonna ask you guys who put the website together. It's really legit, and it's really nice that you guys now have digital comics.
Yeah, we made a big push on that to try and get everything in a digital form.
I think the way we ought to handle this is we'll start off just by going around, starting with Justin, and then to Jeff, and then to Vince, and we'll just let you guys talk a little bit about how you initially conceptualized your comic book, and just kind of pitch your comic a little bit to the listeners, and then we'll talk about them kind of all collectively after that. Manos, everybody's heard you talk about Red Knight, but talk about it again.
Sure, why not? Todd McClane is Red Knight. He's a superhero who lives in a superhero universe, and he's kind of a fanboy. He is the kid that grew up not watching sports or TV or anything like that. He's a big fan of superheroes, are actually real in his world. So he wanted to naturally grow up and be one, and he was very inspired by a number of the heroes. By their stories and by their adventures and what they would say to, society at large. So eventually a thing happens to him that's really horrible. And actually in issue 3 you get to learn he was kidnapped and experimented on, and he escaped with super strength. So naturally he goes, well, this is my key. This is my foot in the door. And years later, once he grows up, things have actually changed. The laws have changed. And there's a number of things that have happened over the years that just kind of forced the government to take some steps. And now you have to have a license in order to be a superhero. And it's really hard to get one. You almost have to know somebody. And if you do get one, you're basically putting your superhero career in the hands of others, and they get to choose where you go. They get to make all sorts of decisions. So he has secretly partnered up with a police officer named Martha Brown of Norfolk PD, and they have a special crime unit dealing with superpowered people. And so they kind of work off the board. Him as an outlaw hero, basically, in a world where everybody's kind of lost their faith, really. And he seems to be the only one that really kind of remembers or is inspired by, what used to inspire people. And that's why I normally say that his tagline is the last optimistic man in a cynical world. Because
was that his tagline back when you first came up with him years ago?
That's actually something that kind of I eventually evolved into when I was creating him. When I originally created him, there actually really wasn't that aspect very, very much into it. He was just my idea of a superhero, and things started snowballing. Like, I created him in the very early 90s, like 1990. And that was the heart of the grim and gritty period. Where everything was post-Watchmen and post-Dark Knight Returns, where everyone was trying very hard to see how they were trying to out-dark each other.
Yeah.
And out-cynical each other. And as much as I liked a lot of that stuff, and actually most of that stuff, and I thought it brought a real good sense of realism to the genre of superheroes, but I think what got completely lost was the inspiration, was the awe-inspiring stories of heroism and people who were good. And that seemed to got lost. It's like now people have to have some kind of reason, outside of just doing, their job and just doing. They have to have some really dark, secret kind of backstory. Excuse me. So that kind of progressed over time, where I was realizing that Todd, even though he's a young man, is almost a guy out of time, where his virtues and his philosophies to some seem out of date, even by the people who inspired him in the first place, who have kind of lost faith.
Yeah, and that always seemed to me like a really modern idea, and that was something that really resonated with me just looking at current comics, and I think that was the thing that your book had going for it the most at the beginning, and then as it's evolved, it's got a lot of other awesome things going for it. Like now, Red Knight's getting a rogues gallery. I've really been enjoying having some superpowered costume characters that aren't just mobsters.
Yeah. Well, I had to get him started with the mobsters, and that was very important. Like the first, 12, 20 issues, I need to introduce his world, and through that, I'm introducing villains, and they will kind of explain this universe through them. Like Mr. Bird explains about the dark magic of this universe, and Dr. Sci-Fi explains, the hardcore sci-fi stuff. The villains of the next issues I'm doing will explain what's gone wrong with the superhero collective. And there's going to be like aliens and terrorists, and there will be more mafia guys, and there's going to be more robots, and it's just going to explain. I tend to think a rogues gallery can pretty much teach you what your character is like and what their world is like, because the villains are just other people that made horrible decisions, where my guy is learning how to make the right decisions.
Let's go ahead and jump over now. I think what we'll do is we'll talk about art here in a little bit, Manos. But I want to give the other guys a chance to talk about their books too. And Jeff, are you there? Are you with us,
Yes,
Jeff?
I am.
So The Ends is a book unlike anything I've ever seen before. I'm popping this book open, and I'm not seeing traditional artwork. I'm seeing photography that's being manipulated in a computer. And what gave you the idea to not do this as a traditional comic book? And how do you go about that whole process?
Well, I mean, really, I sat down and this is a story that I've wanted to tell since I was a kid. I can hand render. I can actually draw, but it takes me a very long time, and I'm not that talented at it. In my day job, I'm actually a graphic designer, and I work in Photoshop a lot already. And I mean, really, I sat down and looked at, this is a 72 issue plotted out story. And I don't want to be in a situation where I start it and then I'm not able to finish it because I can't afford to pay an artist.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I'm good enough with digital art that, if I can get something into Photoshop, I can make it look however I want it to. And so, I mean, the process was basically I cast people in the parts. And then I hold a photography shoot about once every 3 months where I get like a bank of photos. And then, I bring that into Photoshop and try to make it look like it's drawn to some degree. I mean, I don't pretend that it's drawn in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's important, it's important to make sure that I'm not trying to represent this as hand-rendered art. And then, I mean, backgrounds come from stock images or, stuff that's in the public domain. Sometimes I take pictures of action figures, Halloween masks, things like that, get them into Photoshop, and then mess with them to make monsters and things like that.
The Ends is another superhero book, but of course much, much different from Manos's. And in fact, one of the things I really like about what you guys are doing at Primal Paper is how different all the books are and how it's not just all straight up superhero stuff. And there's obviously what Vince is doing is classic science fiction. How are you going forward with The Ends? And I've only read the first 3 issues now. I think the 4th is out. How are you kind of grappling with making it feel like a superhero book where we have characters that did have costumes, but we don't really see them in costume very well, or very often rather, and it's more of kind of a post-apocalyptic thing. How are you kind of juggling doing kind of a post-apocalyptic book at the same time as it still being kind of a superhero book?
The thing of it is that I come from the comics that I've always been a fan of are the kind of the deconstructed comics. And I don't know that you'll ever, I use the word superheroes in describing the characters, but at the end of the day, more than the entire concept of these characters is that they're what's left. They're not the A or B team. They're more like the D- team. They're the broken, not very good at their job people, that, in real life, we deal with everywhere we go, and in many cases, we are that person. All of us have had a job where we had to do something that we weren't very good at, but we did it because that was how we were, that's what we had to do at that point. You get the mailman who comes in and never puts the mail into the right slots. These are the superheroes that never get the mail into the right slots, who try really hard. But they weren't the people who were supposed to be, they weren't the people that were supposed to save the world. There were other people who were supposed to save the world, but they've disappeared.
Yeah, and they failed. What's kind of fun is it's not really a book about the end of the world. The world seems to have ended. To
some degree. The world will end over the course of the story, and where it goes, that's where it gets to. But these are characters who are trying their hardest to make things better, and whether or not they're succeeding at that, I kind of leave that to the readers. But my personal take on it is that none of them are very good at their jobs. There's a lot of different levels. The book is called The Ends, and each of the characters is actually kind of representative of an era, and they're the end of their eras. You've got a 1930s kind of shadow style vigilante. You've got a 3,000-year-old Age of War who is really kind of obsolete. He's a sword fighter.
Yeah.
You've got a guy who's kind of the age. He's the accelerator, who's what I refer to as a hyperscience specialist. He's NASA's superhero. And he's kind of the end of the current age, and then you have the younger kid, the Nighthawk, who is kind of representative of now. And so as these characters interact with the world and as they move through the story, it is moving to I have a definite beginning, middle, and end in mind. And I know how the story ends at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely a book that feels like it's got a sure direction, and that we're having to kind of put the pieces together as we go along. And I think especially by issue 3, that becomes really, really apparent. I wanted to ask you if any of your main characters were, like, if you saw them as riffs on any pre-existing superheroes, or who you were kind of thinking of when you were coming up with them.
And it's tricky because the book actually started as a role-playing game about 25 years ago. It was a bunch of my friends in high school who sat around a table, and we all created these characters. And if you look through the pages, they're given credit for the creation of those characters.
Right. Yeah.
Even though they're not working with me on this book, they did back in the day. These characters and these stories kind of formed organically through years of interaction between a group of friends. I saw your review of the ends, and you talked about Rorschach, and it was funny to me because the Peregrine was actually created before Rorschach.
Yeah, when you just said that 25, I knew it was a long time ago, but I didn't know it was quite that long ago. So that's really interesting. But you could see why I said that.
No, absolutely. I mean, and I can't say that he hasn't been influenced. I can't say that he's, basically I'm taking 10, 15 years of source material that was not intended to be a linear story in any way, shape, or form. And now I'm taking all that material and I am filtering it into what my vision of that story is and what the story I want to tell is. And so the characters absolutely have been influenced by stuff that has gone on since their creation.
Oh yeah, you're going to be influenced by everything you've seen since all that. And of course, Rorschach himself was based mostly on the Question,
which was based on Mr. A.
Yeah.
To me, the interesting thing about Winston to me is that, and Winston was actually my character in the game, so he is actually closest to my initial contribution to the story.
Oh, that's interesting.
The Peregrine does not believe in free will, and that applies to himself as well. He believes that we are all machines and that we are essentially formed through genetics and environment, and we have no control over those influences. So we're never capable of making a choice other than the choice that we're capable of making.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of a promo thing that I did where he talks about, there is no hand that frames this. There is no hand that frames the symmetry. We are compelled to do the things we do, and it's not your fault that you're a thug or a murderer or a rapist. You can't help yourself. But unfortunately, I can't help myself either, and I'm here to punish you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I wondered a lot when I first started reading it if the ends as a title wasn't somewhat of a double entendre, given that if you finish the statement, it's the ends justify the means, and there definitely seems to be that argument going on there.
And it absolutely is. And the thing about me as a writer, I primarily come from a poetry background. I was a professional poet for a number of years, and I'm semi-retired as a performance poet now. But as I'm writing this, the things that occur to me to work in, the book is much more tonal than it is necessarily a linear plot-driven story. And not to say that the plot's not there, and it's currently my biggest influence as far as on this book. I've been reading a lot of Prophet. And I don't know if you read Prophet.
I'm not familiar with it. I know what it is, but
the book is. It doesn't give you the story; it gives you pieces, and you're left to kind of assemble things. And I don't mind. Not everybody is going to be into this kind of book.
Sure.
And that's fine. I'm not. I have designed the book. One of the reasons I do my own art is to keep the cost down, so that. I've started this, and if nobody ever buys a copy, I can finish my story and put it on the shelf, and it's there for me to read. And if other people come along on the ride, that's great, and I totally want an audience. But I didn't want to start it and then not be able to finish it.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense, and especially since you've got it mapped out the way you do, and you said you need, 72 issues?
I have it plotted to 72 issues, give or take a few issues. I mean, there's room for the story to develop organically. I actually create the art as I'm writing it. I have it kind of plotted out in my head ahead of time, but I work on the art and the writing simultaneously, and then it goes through several edits.
Let's go ahead and move on now to Vince. Hey, Vince, you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Vince, how long have you been working on Willpower now? Because I read the first couple issues, I want to say a couple of years ago now.
Yeah, you'd probably be right. I think it's a year and a half, or going on 2 years now. March, I think it came out 2011, or something like that. And Yeah, about 2 years now.
And was that something like these other guys that you had in the back of your mind for a long time, or that you had kind of been developing, or did you start working on it when you came up with it?
Yeah, basically, it was not something I thought about for a long time. It was something that sort of came to me about a year or two before I started the project. I drew out the character and never really did much after it. I was as Jeff. I was a graphic designer. I was working in a marketing firm, and I kind of had a cushy, I sort of had a cushy little life going. And willpower sort of comes out of the legend of willpower. You have to say it. You have to say it with that voice and that tone.
I'm sorry. Let me start over. Vince, talk to us a little bit about the legend of willpower.
Well, it sort of comes out. The legend of willpower sort of comes out of that. I'm not sure if everyone else has received this, but I did as a child, of my parents telling me to not to pursue anything artistic and so forth, and stick to the hard sciences and so forth. And that there was a part of me that wanted to rebel. And like I said, I was a graphic designer, I had a cushy job, I created this concept, and I said, nah, I'll never do anything with it. I'll just keep working for this marketing firm. And just one day I decided, you know what, I want to do something for me. And the one thing I wanted to do was to pursue this desire I had as a child, and that was to go a little further in the art, my art career, and dive into comics a little more. And so I picked up Willpower and I started to create the book. And literally, after I finished the last page of the first issue, I took it to print. I think I released it maybe 3 weeks later, and I didn't even have issue 2 or issue 3 or anything developed. I just did it. I just did it because so many people will sit and plan for years and never move, and I realized I wasted enough time. So I might as well put it out there. If I get it right, I get it right. If I get it wrong, I'll learn.
One of the things I've been really impressed with you, Vince, is just your immense enthusiasm for this character, and you have a really great sense of branding, which I guess makes a lot of sense if you're working for a marketing firm.
Yeah.
But I look at your I look at Primal Paper Comics.com, and I look at your own personal website, and you've got T-shirts, and you've got all these really distinctive icons. Where did you come up with the symbol that is on Willpower's costume? What's the significance of that?
Yeah, well, you said a couple of powerful words. First, his symbol is like a gold fist, and there's a lot of there's a lot of symbolism in Willpower, but it is not. I think you'd have to read the whole series to start to understand it. But Will, that costume that he's wearing is actually a football jersey, and it's the jersey to his high school team. Will is a teenager. He's in high school. He plays football. He's a quarterback, and the name of his football team is called the Greenfield High Titans, and their logo is this gold fist, the fist of the Titans. And I wanted to come up with something that I was really impressed by. The Captain America T-shirts. I'm impressed by like the Batman T-shirts, where your comic can be a part of. Where your comic icon can be a part of someone's apparel very easily. And so I said, well, why not have my character just wear a T-shirt, and the logo would be a part of his T-shirt, and then if it becomes very popular, you can just sell these T-shirts and people will feel like they're wearing the costume. Hence a take off of underoos.
Yeah, well, that's really cool that it would happen backwards like that it would start as a T-shirt, and then if it got really popular, then people would wear T-shirts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really neat idea, and is so indicative of that character. I love the initial concept, Vince, that you've got this guy who becomes superpowered because everyone else basically becomes depowered.
Yeah, it's not that that you brought that up. The concept of willpower is that he exists in a universe where it's not that he becomes powerful, but the universe becomes weaker, and that happens through the conversion of its matter becoming less dense. Its matter becomes less dense, and because he stays the same, he's the normal density. He's therefore the densest and strongest thing, sort of in this reality, in this universe. And so I'm developing a word now called unpowers. He sort of has these unpowers. And because he's also referred to as old matter, because everything else is this new matter. And you start to get these weird and odd physics or changes in physics when his matter, which is old matter, interacts with new matter. And all the great twists you can pull off of that. But I just wanted to touch on one thing that you said before. You said the book has a lot of icons in it and so forth. And that's really what the whole thrust of The Legend of Willpower is that I wanted to build the concept of an icon. And some people say that's impossible, but to me what an icon is exactly what comics were for me when I was a child. It was something that was so an icon is something that's so powerful and so impressive that it can leave an impression upon you long after you've seen it. And once you see it again, it's so easily recognizable that you understand all parts of its sum instantly. And I thought that you could do that by just distilling down your character into its basic traits. And with Will, it's like this. It's like a celebration of nostalgia. It's the acclamation that man needs an ideal, and that if you just do good, good things will come. And so that's what I wanted to try and do. Whether I achieved that or not.
Something that I think Willpower really brings to the table as a character is that you make a really great case for the regular Joe who becomes extraordinary. A lot of people over the years have complained that Superman, as written by certain writers, is difficult to relate to. I think that Willpower is a very easily relatable character because he's not just a regular guy, but when everybody else becomes depowered and loses their density, he is exactly the way he was.
Yeah,
and that's why he's extraordinary. I found that absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. Someone made a comment. I believe it's one of our cohorts, and he said to all you need to change the world or something is where everything else changes, all it takes is for one man to stay the same to change the world, or something like that. And I thought that was pretty insightful. That maybe, and sort of relates to what Justin was saying about his world, and sort of even what Jeff is saying, is that as everyone else as the world changes, maybe the moral scale slides a little bit to the left or right, that if you have at least a few people who just remain solid on where they stand, those people will stick out and they will become sort of like the icons, because they have not moved in their morals. They haven't moved in what they believed in. And he hasn't moved molecularly.
Yeah, physically, literally.
Yeah.
He hasn't moved. I really like you guys, that all you guys are trying to, in some way or another. I guess, Jeff, yours is a little bit more complicated because you've got a lot of kind of philosophical debate going on between your characters. But by and large, I think you guys are creating characters that are people that somebody might actually want to look up to, not just trying to see how edgy you can make your comic books. And I really like that, because that's what comic books were for me when I was a kid, and I feel like that's something that we all kind of have in common here is that, we grew up looking at these characters and we wanted to be these characters, and there's a reason for that. And when you're writing a comic book, you have to kind of figure out why a person would not only you sympathize with your protagonist, but why would they look up to that protagonist? Why are they a good role model? And I think superheroes, I don't think that we've gotten to an age where role models are outdated. I think we still need them, and I appreciate that you guys are trying to create those.
I agree, and one of the things in Red Knight in particular, because it's my book, but I've noticed that in each one of our books that the world and the universe that they live in really does have a lot to do with shaping who they are. And I've noticed in the last, couple of decades that I've been working on developing this character and his world, is that people seem to be less willing to believe in role models, and they just can't wait to tear them down. And look at the moon landing conspiracy theorists. They can't even believe that we were talented enough as a species to get onto the moon. Yeah. That we had to fake it. They're not even willing to be inspired. And that's one of the things that at least Todd, I think he fights against in his own world. Where people, when you add the level of when you add this level of superhumans in the world, doing all that crazy superhero, supervillain stuff, all that people just get even more jaded. I think about sometimes what it'd be like to be a person living in the Marvel or DC universe. It's like, I can't even imagine how hard it would be to just get up every day and believe you can make any kind of change in this world. I want to use the metaphor, and this is what Vince was talking about, symbolism. Symbolism is a big part of doing superheroes, and I want to use that to talk about what's going on in this world right now, and I want to do it in a way that it's not too specifically dated, because I think these are problems that people have always had. The world has gone up and down. Not even just in Western culture, but all over the world throughout history. So it's sometimes tough.
And I don't know that. The only character that I would actually cite as somebody who people might be advised, it might be advisable for them to consider him a role model, would be the Accelerator.
Yeah. That's the one I would.
The Nighthawk is really just kind of a slacker, kind of punk kid, and Winston. It's fascinating to me, as far as the audience that I've gotten so far. Which character do people latch on to? Because I think it says a lot about them.
Yeah, sure.
And it's funny because I like the Peregrine. He was my original character, but there is much that's not admirable about him. He's a very unlikable character in a lot of ways.
I have to throw my hat in with you, Cap, on the nostalgia of superheroes and the importance that they have on kids and so forth. Now I'm going to sound like an old fogey here, but that's like, for me, that's like the whole gist of Willpower. It's not the whole thing for every comic, but I think it's at the heart of comics that the comics themselves provide these role models for the reader, and that cartoons are like this vehicle for children and adults to learn and be shaped by. As a kid, I couldn't wait for Saturday mornings to come. I jump out of bed, I run downstairs and turn on and watch Saturday morning cartoons. And those things, they had all types of moral plays in them, and they illustrated what right and wrong was. And as children, it's so easy for us to see good and evil. And as you get older, you start to form this cynicism and this grayness that I think comics really they bring you clarity. And they had public service announcements like McGruff the crime dog would come on and say, take a bite out of crime. And good guys never kill, and crime doesn't pay, and
only you can prevent forest fires.
Only you can prevent, and knowing is half the battle. And this is where I'm going to sound like an old fogey, but those cartoons like Mask and He-Man and G.I. Joe and all that stuff, they faded away, and they started to be replaced with stuff like Beavis and Butthead, The Simpsons, Drawn Together, Adventure Island or whatever. And if you notice the characters in those books, they're not necessarily role models. They're sort of snarky. They sort of have, they're disrespectful. They're sort of they're full of a lot of slights and comebacks. And for like 20 so years or so, the cartoons have sort of evolved into that, and the anti-hero in comics evolved into that. And you look at the difference between how the adults today who watch the good stuff that I that I grew up on, and you look at the children today who are influenced by the video games and the first-person shooters and the anti-hero and the snarky comics, and you see how they behave. There's a huge valley between what we call moral behavior and what the kids call moral behavior now. And I think a lot of that is because they didn't have icons, they didn't have superheroes, they didn't have these animated role models to give this great impression upon their lives.
I think it's important to note that there's room for both. I think with a lot of
I agree. That's a great point, because I agree. I want to be inspired by what we can do and what's possible, but I don't want to completely get my head in the clouds. I generally consider myself a realist. I am half, Captain America philosophy, and I am half Batman philosophy. You just got to keep your feet on the ground, so you just got to be aware. But I don't know. I guess it's hard. It's hard to keep keep yourself grounded like that. I guess, and that's what sometimes you have to do. And I guess that's what the people in our lives, either our family or our friends. Are we getting off topic?
Well, maybe a little bit.
I feel like we're getting way off our topic.
I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting with the I'll call it the company, even though really we're just kind of a loose confederation more than a company.
Company.
We are not all on the same page on that, on the answer to that question in many ways. From my perspective, the world is a horrible place, and comics are a way to tell a story, and there's no reason not to be real. But I see what Vince is saying. Vince and I are very kind of diametrically opposed.
We're diametrically
opposed in our approaches to telling stories, and it's interesting that somebody like me and somebody like Will can work in the same space.
Yeah, well, and to bring this back a little bit to Primal Paper, I think that, and where I was kind of going with all this, is that I like that you guys are so different, and that you're using the medium to do such different things. And Jeff, I wasn't trying to count you out when I was talking about how these guys are creating role models and you're doing something different. That's good. When I'm looking at Vince's work, I'm seeing all ages. I'm seeing something I want my kid to read.
Absolutely.
And forgive me, Jeff, but when I look at your work, I'm not looking.
I had somebody ask me. He was like, "What's the age? Could I get this for my kid?" And I was like, I don't. I actually go out of my way not to curse in the book.
That's true.
But I told him, I was like, there's a lot of, there's a character who may or may not be God, and I had not answered that question, and I'm kind of leaving it up to other people who doesn't make it. And that's not something I would put into a 7 or 8 year old's hands. I don't know if I would put it in a 10 or a 12-year-old's hand.
Yeah, it's an adult themed book, and I like that you've got that range. Manos, yours is kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I really think so, and I think that goes along with my philosophy. I'm inspired by what's good, but I can see what's bad about this world, and I try not to lie to myself about it. And I'm trying to incorporate that in the series too. A lot of my worldview is kind of in this book, and you'll see it more and more as Red Knight gets more and more deeper into this superhero universe he lives in. And I think that's part of the partnership between him and Martha. Martha Brown has seen the ugliness of what superheroes and villains bring to this universe. And, she once believed in what's doing right, and she's had some really, really dark stuff happen that she's seen for herself and she sees happen to other people. And she's hoped that has a lot to do with their partnership. Is maybe they can kind of find their way together through this, which is why she's training him. Because I always thought that would be interesting to have like the cop train the superhero how to fight crime. I personally had never seen that, so that's what I thought I'd bring to it.
If I can switch gears here a little bit, Vince, tell us a little bit about your new book set in what you're calling the Powerverse Action Pack. But I just read the first issue of it and absolutely loved it.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, well, it's the Powerverse Chronicles is just it's just more of an extension of what's going on in the Legend of Willpower world. It's meant to sort of showcase the events and characters that take place around Will. And I was going to have Action Pack just be its own title, but I said, you know what? This will be a real great platform to just go off into the far depths of the universe in some hidden crack in creation, or go all the way back to the corner of the lab where some rat and roach lives, and I can explore this whole dynamic in this book. So I called it the Powerverse Chronicles, hence power after willpower. And one of the main reasons why it's the Powerverse is as Will's father, Professor Power, he's this world-acclaimed scientist. He creates the machine, the matter density converter. And that's the machine that goes off and changes the density of all reality, and that wave that it sends out, where it changes the density of matter, it has an effect on the reality, and that book shows how it affects the different aspects and different corners of this world. And in Powerverse Chronicles #1, it features a group of teenagers called the Action Pack. And they actually appear in the Legend of Willpower issue 3 as well. But now you get to see a little more of them in the Powerverse Chronicles #1. And the team is it's a 5-person team, or maybe 4-person team. We really don't know. But it consists of, yeah, because once you read it, you start to question, the validity of some of these characters, or whether they're real or not, whether they actually exist, or whether or not they're figments of the characters in the book's imagination. But it features Boy Fearless, Element Girl, the Quiver Kid, Rough Draft, and Sketch, and they make up the Action Pack. And just to go over their power set very quickly, Boy Fearless, he actually has uncanny confidence. That's his ability. He can overcome his fear by
I was going to ask you what exactly his power was. It seems like all this guy has is I'll run at things and I don't mind.
And I don't mind it. Yeah, he has no fear. And hence his name, Boy Fearless. But the real thing is, the real concept is that everyone has a little fear inside, and I guess he probably has more than most, and he just tries to overcompensate by being overly confident. And then there's Element Girl. That's my take on like an elemental. She can sort of control the weather, but you ever heard someone say, man, the weather's changing, so sporadically, like, especially as we all know in the United States, the weather's changing left and right. Well, her emotions can affect the weather, but the weather can sort of affect her emotions as well. And she sort of has like this schizophrenic sort of mindset where the seasons have taken on personalities of themselves. So you have like this guy called the fall, this guy called the winter, a lady called spring, a lady called summer, and they all have these different personalities.
And they're constantly arguing in her head.
Yeah. And then there's Rough Draft and Sketch, one of my favorite characters. Yeah. And Rough Draft is a little kid who can draw, and what he draws manifests itself in this orange energy. And he's sort of like a Green Lantern, just done differently. But he also has this other partner of his called Sketch, which is this big, hairy, monster-like character who we believe is a drawing of Rough Drafts, or we believe is a real person. We're not quite sure, but if you read, follow the story, that answer is sort of given.
Vince, you've been drawing your own comic book, but this one is drawn by somebody else. Tell us about the artist there, and if that artist is going to keep going.
Yeah, well, the Powerverse Chronicles, the closest thing I can compare it to is like Dark Horse Presents, and it's going to have different storylines and different characters in it, and it will have different art teams. Now, the people who produced that artistically is Leonardo Capello. I always have a hard time pronouncing his name, and Marco Padilla. Look, you got to pick up the book. Go to primalpaper.com, pick up the digital copy for 99 cents. Yeah, and these guys are amazing. They're out of Italy, and they did some fantastic work. There was a prologue in that book that was produced by Larry Stroman, who is of X Factor and Marvel fame from a while back, and he's producing the second Powerverse Chronicles. And that story, oddly enough, is going to feature Chief Lee, which is the security chief of Power Industries, and how he came about, sort of his background story, and how he came to be part of Power Industries. But that's going to be produced by Larry Stroman. And there's another title or another story after that. The artist has not been locked down completely, so I don't want to release the name. But yeah, that's the idea, is that it can have a rotating roster.
Yeah, that's really cool. Are you going to do any of those yourself, or are you sticking straight to Legend of Willpower?
Well, the concept with Legend of Willpower is that I'm going to draw it as I'm going to draw it at least up to issue 6 or 7, and I want to continue drawing it. But I'm definitely going to draw it up to issue 6 or 7. It's going to remain in black and white, whereas the Powerverse Chronicles was full color, and I'm attempting to try to make the Powerverse Chronicles full color and leave the Legend of Willpower in black and white. It will have color covers from this point on, but I will try to allow the interiors to remain being black and white.
And are you going to be releasing, and I don't know if you have, are you going to release Powerverse Chronicles at all in print, or is it just staying digital?
Everyone's asking me about that. I will release it in print. It's just that it's a different cost matrix, and I've been trying to hold off on that, but it's actually going to go to print very soon, to tell you the truth. But do not allow that to stop you from buying digital copies. Get the digital copies.
I'm sorry, I was asking selfishly because I'd like a copy of it.
Awesome. Yeah. I would say actually within the next month or two. It was supposed to go to print next month, but I think it's going to have to wait till the following month, and it's going to do a small print run. I'm going to see how that goes, and I think the process for color copies for me is I'm going to have to pre-sell them first from this point on. That way I can cover the printing costs.
And Manos, is everything at Primal Paper now available in digital?
Just about, except for 41. Is that right, Jeff?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah. Red Knight, Willpower, The Ends, Dogs and Sailors are all available digitally, as well as the Powerverse Chronicles.
And since Bob France and Forrester weren't able to make it with us, Manos, tell us briefly about their books, will you?
Well, I'll start with, let's see. I'll start with, I guess, Dogs and Sailors. Forrester is a local Norfolk artist who is a cartoonist, an artist, and a writer, and he came to me on the Primal Paper Facebook page. And he talked to me about maybe possibly doing a book. And I took a look at his stuff and was instantly blown away by his art style and by the premise of the series. And I was like, yes. And what it is it takes place in 1940s Norfolk, Virginia, and it's a detective series, and it has the backdrop of World War II in it, and it uses a lot of Norfolk history, which I think is really fascinating, and it is not something that's really discussed, obviously, nationally, but even locally here in the area, there's lots of stuff I didn't even know about my own local history here. And what's interesting was Norfolk, for the first couple of decades that Navy was here, was not considered a great town for the Navy, because there was a lot of tension, and with tension comes crime. So he put basically a film noir type of storytelling with the backdrop of World War II in the town of Norfolk, and it's a really fascinating read. The first issue deals with Seth and Leia. Leia is she owns a barn. She's with the Navy, and she works.
I think it's actually pronounced Lyra.
Lyra? Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry, Forrester. Anyway, Lyra and Seth are working together, and he is a detective. He's a private investigator who couldn't get into the military. So he's kind of doing his part in the homeland. And the first issue deals... What's interesting is he deals with a lot of really ugly crimes. Like the first one has to do with the sex trade. And the next one deals with people being prosecuted for homosexual crimes or something like that, right, Jeff?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and then he does, I think in the third or fourth issue, he's talking about dealing with racism back in the 40s. All the while with this kind of cool, fun detective spin on it, and I enjoy the book a lot.
And then 41 is a 41 is another 41 is another kind of post-apocalyptic kind of story, although doesn't really deal with superheroes. It's basically the world. There was an apocalyptic event 41 years ago. Nobody really remembers what it was because it was 4 decades ago, and there's no, the world has very much changed into there's no information network. There's kind of bands of survivors, and they each kind of have their own concepts as far as how this happened. It starts with a group of guys who are basically mercenaries, trying to recover a scientist for somebody that's hired them, and this guy supposedly has the secret to kind of restore civilization to something comparable to what it used to be, and not this horrible post-apocalyptic nightmare. And it's done by Bob France, and he jokes around that he has a cast of thousands. He's gone through a few artists.
Yeah.
He is actually. I talked to him recently, and he is actually he is working on the next issue, and I believe he has an artist for it.
That's good. I was hoping he would keep going on that. I've interviewed Bob before. He's a great guy. He was a lot of fun to talk to, and I was hoping we'd get him tonight.
Yeah, I'm not sure where he is. He's a dad, and his new job is he's a stay-at-home dad, so
I know what that's like.
Some things kind of catch up. But yeah, I think I'm a single father as well, so I feel for him.
Yeah.
He's not a single father, but he's staying at home and taking care of the kids.
I want to go ahead and mention to everybody right now that we are going to do a Primal Paper giveaway. That's right.
Yay!
We're we're going to give away some books. Manos, how did you want to do this? Are we going to give away like one of, I don't want to get in trouble here, like one of everything of you guys' books, or how did you want to handle it?
At least one of. I actually have double or actually triple of everybody's book for the first issue. I can definitely do that. And maybe I'll throw in a couple extras here and there.
Okay, cool. So we'll make it a Primal Paper prize pack. You'll get several issues, and all we need you to do is leave a comment right now stating that you would like to enter for the Primal Paper prize pack, and the only other thing you need to do to enter is to go to Primal Paper's Facebook page. The link is there in the description. Go there and like the page, and please, if you can, leave a comment just saying that we sent you there, or that you heard our podcast, and that you're interested in these guys' books and what they have going on. But leave a comment, something friendly, and say hello, and make sure and like the Facebook page, and that will enter you into the drawing. And in about a week or so, I will draw a name out of the hat, and you will get a Primal Paper prize pack. Guys, let me know what the future is for each of your books. Manos, when are you going to put out issue 7 of Red Knight?
Issue 7 is already written, and I'm just about to send artist J.C. Grande the script. I'm developing some new characters for it. Issue 7 and 8 is going to be a two-parter, and it's going to explore the Union of Superheroes, the sort of supreme government superhero group that I've spent the first 6 issues talking about. And there's a crisis in Norfolk, and Red Knight and Martha are on the job, but also at the same time, the Union of Superheroes are also on the job. Therefore, Red Knight meets his childhood heroes for the first time, and it's going to explore what it's like to meet your heroes, and maybe they're not exactly the people you thought they were. And after that, issue 9, I'm going to bring back Shiloh Penfield.
Yay!
Yay! And that is going to explore, believe it or not, Red Knight, Todd McLean's high school years. And there's going to be some backstory. I'm going to explain about some of his origin, as well as the girl in the first scene of issue 1. Her name is Heather Houston. And their relationship is going to be explored in that issue.
Awesome. That sounds exciting.
Thank you. Issue 7 is due for August.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. So you're on a break, but not too long of a break.
Not too long. I just got to take a few months off every few issues.
Jeff, you just got issue 4 out.
Yep, issue 4 came out just last week. I am actually on a monthly schedule, which is the other nice thing of actually being able to do my own. That's one of the benefits of doing the art the way I'm able to do it is the way that I do it is that I'm able to actually get the book out a lot quicker than I would otherwise. Issue 5 is in the can. Issue 5 continues the current storyline that issue 4 started, which is called Fallout, which deals with things that are happening to the people who have survived. Strange things are beginning to happen with them. And then in the back pages, I'm doing back page stories where I'm actually covering the origins to some degree of the 4 main characters. Issue 5 will have the first one of that, which focuses on the character of the Blade. The art is also by Shiloh Penfield, although it's very different, I think, than anything else you've seen from her at this point. She's actually using a what we refer to as a chibi manga style. It's a lot of fun because you have this ancient master of the martial arts done in this really cutesy anime style, and he's like chopping people up and stuff. It's I had quite a I can't help but chuckle every time I look at it. I'm just thrilled with the work that she did. And then the next few issues are going to be in that Fallout storyline that begins to kind of explain and kind of show what's going on with the people that are left on the planet. And then I actually I'm not sure where this is going to come out, but I actually wrote a Willpower story that I'm really excited
Oh, really? You guys diametrically opposed, but you'll work together.
I think it's a mark of a writer to be able to. It was interesting to me because it's the first time I've actually written another person's character. You want to sit down and you don't want to. I thought about this a lot with you and Spanier because McFarlane has a lot of guest writers. You don't, and as a guest writer, you don't want to go in and alter the landscape too much, but you want to kind of do your own thing with it. And it's an interesting balance to strike. I don't know when it's going to be coming out, but I'm pretty pleased with the story, and I'm excited to see it coming.
That's really neat. Yeah, I look forward to that.
Yeah, I do as well. It's
Vince, you read it?
Yeah, of course. We worked pretty close on it, but I just gave him the background of the story and of the character, not the story. And Jeff came up with an awesome story that really reflects Willpower pretty well. And it's probably going to appear in the Powerverse Chronicles. That's what that's there for, to explore, side stories and such like that. And Justin, I'm not sure if I should say this because this is so far off, but Justin, yeah. Well, I probably won't. But we all play around with storylines and crossing paths with our characters and ideas and stuff like that. So we do that in the background.
Hey, Vince.
Yes.
No, I can't hear you. Come close to the mic.
Oh, wow. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we all play around with storylines and things like that with crossing paths, but we're always playing around with it. Nothing is solidified. But
and that was a question I was going to ask you guys, because that is something that some of my subscribers ask me every now and again, is if Red Knight's ever going to cross into anybody else's books. And in fact, I've got a comic coming out this year, and people have even asked me, hey, will Red Knight appear in Captain Logan's multiverse? I'm like, I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know. I should just forewarn you guys. People love their crossovers.
Never say never.
Well, we've discussed the idea, but the problem is our universes are so vastly different. From what I'm doing, what Jeff's doing, from Forrester, Bob, and Vince, we would have to figure out something really clever.
And if they're not already in the same universe, you don't want half the crossover to be explaining how they got the universe.
Well, and I've been kind of playing with, I've been kind of teasing people a little bit with my back covers.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, let me take one of their characters and drop them into my world, and what would they be like? I think it was the first issue. Played around with what the bar that Red Knight owns would be like in my world, and it's in the submerged. It's next to the submerged section of Norfolk, and they accept food. They accept canned food and things like that for whiskey. Issue 4 actually has a thing that I based on the BP apology. The We're Doing Better big ad campaign that they did after they dumped however much oil it was into the ocean. But playing it from Power Industries and what would Power Industries be in my world, and it's a much less nice place to work in my world than it is in Willpower's world. And I don't know what that. I've kind of been playing around with. It would have to be a multiverse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the only way.
But there is something interesting to do. Red Knight in my universe probably would have been one of the heroes that was taken away because he's one of the real heroes. And so he would be wherever those guys are.
I'd agree to that. I've often thought about that too, and I think he would have disappeared.
I think it's really interesting that you guys are so interested in each other's books, and that you're not just you're like you said, kind of form this conglomerate, but you're all working in your own little corners. It sounds like you guys talk to each other quite a bit.
Yeah, we keep a running Facebook chat, and we're very supportive of each other. Because we gotta be. We're not. Nobody's writing us checks to do this, really. At the end of the day, we're doing this because we love doing it. And of course, we love each other's books. Even if they are very different.
And I think that was one of the things I initially loved about the concept of Primal Paper Comics is that we are kind of a non-company company where we're each supporting each other. We're each under technically the same banner, but we're all doing the books we love. And these are all obviously books that exist because we wanted to tell these stories. And at the same time, we're doing our best to encourage and promote each other. Just like an Image or a Marvel or something like that.
What is it you said? We're like Image but without the money?
Yes. You're exactly like Image without the money. No money.
Well, and the only big difference I can see is that at least writer-wise, you're all in the same place.
Yeah.
Well, not even anymore, really, because Bob is actually in Cincinnati now.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah, I thought you guys were kind of keeping it all in the same town.
Well, Bob just moved. And Vince actually lives across the water. He lives in, you live in Hampton, right?
Hampton.
Which is a little bit, it's about a half hour away from here.
But, that's close enough, bro. I mean, it's...
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be in the 757 to really kind of get a sense of it, but the different little cities around here, Norfolk, Hampton, Newport News, are even Portsmouth, like people in Norfolk don't go to Portsmouth. It's you kind of stay where you are, and there's not a lot of crossing back and forth between the different localities.
If I may add something,
much like our comic book company, actually.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about Primal Paper is that we really are sort of local, and we've come together as a collective, and you can see all of our faces at all the events, and we're no more than 20 minutes away from each other, and we talk all the time, and we're willing, no matter how diametrically opposed we are, we're always trying to bring those opposites together. And if that's not a company, I don't know what is. But I wanted to just throw out what is on the docket for myself. And
yeah, I was going to ask you.
Oh yeah.
I'm supposed to. I have this. Boy Fearless has a web comic. I'm not sure how I'm going to put this out, but it's a comic strip, like the old-fashioned newspaper comic strips. And issue 1, I didn't realize I was supposed to put out last Wednesday, but it's done. It's going to be like a 16 to 24 part web comic. And that's going to be released soon. I'm probably just going to post it on my site and on the Facebook page this Wednesday. And it's called Boy Fearless, Fear Itself. The Legend of Willpower number 5 is coming out in April.
Yeah.
But I can probably already, I probably can tell you, just look maybe for May 1st. But it's slated to come out April 24th. And then the Powerverse Chronicles is supposed to come out in May, the second issue too. And like we said, we've kicked around several other things, and I'm working on a couple of side projects. Oh yes, and one of my characters from the Powerverse sort of realm is named the Spin Doctor, and he's going to be appearing in something called the God Cell, and it's it is like a crossover universe of characters, and you can find that on Facebook too. You just go to facebook.com, the God Cell, and you can look that up. He's like this, he's like my Batman-like character, sort of mixed with Doctor Strange, and I don't. But yep, that's what I have going on.
Awesome. Well, guys, I am really impressed with what all you guys are doing, and I look forward to reading more of your work and reviewing more of your work. Thanks for coming on the show and talking about the stuff you do, and I'd be happy to have all of you guys down the road when there's a lot more stuff going on.
That's
yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Hey, do you know if this is going to post before April 5th?
Yeah, it definitely will.
Okay, so I do want to put out a plug.
We will be appearing at RavenCon.
And then after that, the Chuckle Hut. But no, we're appearing at RavenCon, the fantasy sci-fi horror convention. We're going to be there selling our wares, meeting the public, and saying hello. Jeff and myself, Vince, we were talking the other day. You can't make that.
It's questionable if I can make it or not.
Vince
Vince
is a maybe, but if Vince can't make it, I'm bringing his books.
Awesome.
And if you're in Richmond, come by and chat with us. We'll sign books, and we'll have the newest issues available, and it'll be a good time.
Was there anything else you guys wanted or needed to plug or mention before we go ahead and head off?
I did want to actually throw out a thank you to Geekvolution and to you for for the work that you do actually promoting independent comics. There's some people out there that are doing it, but I haven't seen the level of support that you guys actually throw out to make people aware that there is more than just the big three out there. And as an independent creator, I really appreciate what you do for it.
Oh, well, thanks for that.
Ditto, Cap. Ditto.
Yeah, Jeff speaks for all of us, really.
Well, I'm happy to do it, and I wouldn't do it if I didn't think you guys were doing quality work.
Good to know.
Everybody, thanks as always for listening to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. Really hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank my special guests today, the Real Manos, Justin Cristelli, Jeff Hewitt, and Vince White for joining us. Please go to primalpaper.com and check out some of their stuff. All of these three guys' work is available right now digital. They've got 99-cent books, so really cheap, awesome entertainment. So be sure and check that out. Also, most everything is available in print, except for Vince's new fantastically awesome book, which very soon I can get in print. And thanks again for listening. I'm Captain Logan, and we'll see you again very soon.